Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another Dojo Live. I'm Tulio Siragusa, broadcasting from Southern California, and today is Thursday, February 17th, 2022. Welcome to the show. We are talking with an awesome guest today who's broadcasting from Seattle, uh, and I'm also joined by Kim Lantis, who's in Emerald City, Mexico.
Hey.
Today we have Yadhu Gopalan, who is the CEO and co-founder of Esper, and we're going to talk about DevOps, everybody's favorite topic, DevOps.
Perfect.
But before we go into the topic and see what we can learn today, let's get to know our guest. And Yadhu, if you could just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you, and then we'll talk about Esper as well. Welcome to the show again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on here. And it's really good to join you all, but want to kind of talk about my background. I spent about 20 years, really like a lot of it building devices. I started off building operating systems. I'm actually a kernel developer at the very early in my career. Did lots of different devices at Microsoft, like embedded devices, phones, music players, gaming machines, automotive, everything. And then I went over to Amazon, did all the Fire OS products there, and then Amazon Go, all the devices that's in the thousands of devices that are all over the store, watching you and making sure, checking, see what you're buying. And then spent a little bit of time on AWS doing some like monitoring, telemetry, and data centers, servers, etc. And that's when I kind of decided that we wanted to do Esper based on a lot of the experiences that I gathered throughout my career.
Excellent. It's been an interesting evolution to see how we've gone from dumb devices to smart devices to embedded IoT technologies. So much has happened in recent years. So it's an interesting, we're going to learn a lot from you, having been in that space. Tell us about Esper. What gave birth to Esper? What was that moment where, we should do this? And what do you guys do today?
So, as I said, worked with a lot of devices, but one of the common aspects, and this is especially true of like Amazon Go later stages, like we were always building infrastructure software infrastructure to go out and like get these devices initialized, provision, deploy, keep them up to date. And especially on these projects that had to kind of start early, we wanted to like do new features, new capabilities, almost on a daily basis. How do we improve that? So we had to kind of like step back first and build infrastructure before we could actually do what these devices are supposed to be doing, which is kind of whether it's a TV or monitoring or some shops. And it's that kind of from a technical point of view got me thinking is like we gotta be able to build something that's like turnkey that can kind of be suitable for a lot of people trying to do these same type of solution. The other aspect is personal. I did a startup before I did the 20 years, and that didn't go anywhere. I was very early in my career, learned a lot, and I felt like it's the right time for me to kind of, after doing this corporate stint at Microsoft and Amazon, do a startup again. That itch was there. The idea was there. The itch was there. A co-founder who kind of connected with me, and I said, okay, perfect person to do the startup. So all three things were there, and then that's where Esper was born.
So what is it exactly that Esper does? What's the pitch? Let's hear the pitch. Just curious to see what it is.
So when you got these devices that are like dedicated devices, what that means is these devices do one thing really well, and that's all. That's really what they're built to do. They're this product, and they're deployed all around the world. You've got fleets of thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions. How do I reliably get software at a fast pace to these systems? And these days, software also means like machine learning models, firmware, your application, everything. How do I do that consistently, repeatedly, and with confidence that I can do that, so that I can make that security, 0-day security fix when I need to. I can create value for the customer. I can fix bugs. And there's a lot of fear on devices. I shouldn't, like, it's out, it's shipped, I don't touch it. But that's not the way the modern world works. Modern world is about improving. These are devices that are bringing great value to the customers. And what we don't want to have is all these people trying to build these great solutions, having to go focus on infrastructure first before they go focus on the value that they're going to bring for these devices. Whether it's a fitness device, a restaurant, a hospitality device, or some medical device, that's what they should be. That's what they should be focused on, is creating that value,
Right.
not in the infrastructure.
Well, let's go right into the topic because I've got a million questions. One in particular, like what's the difference between this and MDM? So let's just go into the topic and see what we can learn. Kim, if you could please kick that off, would be great.
Sure, of course. Thank you, Tulio, and thank you, Yadhu, for joining us today. The topic as chosen by you, Yadhu, is stop making excuses, start shipping device updates, and more specifically, how it's time to apply DevOps to dedicated device management. Now, you already touched a little on what a dedicated device is. What I'm curious to know is this word DevOps. I see this everywhere now. I mean, you cannot go on a tech company's careers page without seeing at least one DevOps role that is open. And that's certainly a trend I think that I've seen change over the past year, 2, 3. What is DevOps and why is it such a big deal right now?
It is, so from a cloud perspective and like cloud services, etc., people are starting to get used to where developers check in code, the code gets built, gets deployed to the cloud servers, and there's an automation involved and is repeatable, and they continue. There may be stages, there may be developer staging, production, etc., and it's a repeated process. Whether you're doing a Kubernetes deployment, whatever it is, there's these repeatable processes. Same thing with devices. It's a little, you've got developers developing some solution, the application, or they're doing a firmware change. How do I repeat a process to get that to that edge, deploy and connect the developers to what's on the device, and do that 1,000 times over, 100,000 times over, and at the same time understand the intricacies of device deployment, etc. There are uniqueness, and I can talk a lot more about that. But the whole idea is to make that repeatable, and we can talk also like the MDMs and stuff like that. But DevOps is super important. Is to connect the developers that are building it and the operation people that might be taking a look at the devices, etc. But in the end, is to make that streamlined flow.
So let's just kind of paint the picture of where we've come from to see where we're going or what the possibilities are, right? So if we go back a few years, software was deployed at the enterprise level. So you had to build it and then go and install it on premise, and you'd have people that did that and then work through all the bugs and issues. It was a long process, right?
Send out CD-ROMs and cereal boxes.
Exactly.
I mean, there's so much that went into it. Now everything's on the cloud, right? But you still have to have a vehicle to get updates over to the cloud. So it's simplified the way you get updates done, the way you do additional releases. You do it basically without needing to send people or ship any CD-ROMs or what have you, right? Now, devices, smart devices that have embedded software, they're not always necessarily connected to anything, right? Or now with
these days, that's the change. One of the change. All these devices are cloud connected.
Right. So everything is changed now with the LTE or even satellite or 5G. So you've got tiny devices that have the ability to stay connected, and the battery lives have made it so that some of these remote devices can stay connected. But it's always been a challenge to still update them. So I'm just kind of painting the picture where we're coming from. So what's now the next evolution of releasing updates to these remote devices that historically have had to either be sent back and then you only do the updates once a year or what have you? What's changing with what you guys are doing?
I think that's key. I mean, like you said, either they've got sent, you never updated them, you ship the device, and then the next version of the hardware is when you get new software. That was the operational model for devices.
And then spend.
Yep.
And with cloud connected devices, the expectation is they should it'd be continuous improvement, not even a yearly improvement. Though even the customer expectation has changed. If they go to a SaaS product, that SaaS product on this thing is improving on a daily basis. It's being secured on a daily basis. And that's not the way devices have been historically, and they're lagging behind. And that's where we come in. It's like, let's figure out how do we adopt all these practices we have for cloud services, etc. How do I apply them to devices where extend the life cycle? You don't have to send a technician over unless it's a pure hardware failure. And even then, we can maybe let you know, maybe even there's a hardware failure, so you're pretty smart about it. And that's key. And there's just not tooling that's there, and there's a lot, like either you have to build it yourself, maybe a sophisticated company that's building, where I used to work, and where you've got lots of engineers and you can set up resources to build it. Or there might be a solution like MDMs, where like mobile, and let's talk about MDMs. They're from BYOD. They're from mobile device management. They're for the IT team to manage your devices when you're coming in. Yes, they might be able to do the work because somebody can go click deploy, but it's not the way you would expect software to be deployed that you're building to your customers.
Right. So just so I want to understand. So take these AirPod Pros, right?
Yeah.
They've been updated 3 times since I got them.
And you've struggled with them the whole time.
Well, for some reason, Apple can't figure out how to make them work well with the Mac. It's with your iPhone and iPad, it works great. But with the Mac, there's always some issues. But anyway, they're getting better with the upgrades. And so historically, like you say, you bought something like this and you wouldn't get an update or firmware update until you bought the next generation of it, right? So how did they do it? They have an ingrown way to do that, or they use a solution like Esper? Is that aligned with what you're making available to everyone who maybe isn't Apple, for example? Can you walk us through that a little bit?
Exactly. That's the thing. The barrier to making this easy is that you have to go build it. Apple has update mechanisms. I have built it for my companies in the past that just stays inside. But that's the key thing, is like the model has changed. People wanted to, let's take a car, for example. No, you're never thinking of updating a car, but as a certain company has shown, you can actually do software updates to a car, actually increases value over time. That's something that every device, everyone wants to duplicate, but not everyone has the resources to go build that system out and have the, and that's what we want. Our goal is to democratize software updates and DevOps for these systems for everyone. And so they can, even if they have the resources, well, shouldn't they be spending that resource and the time on actually the value proposition that they have for their device?
That's such a great example of the car. I mean, you get a letter out, and then you got to go make an appointment to get an update. It's like a big process, but a lot of people, their lives are disrupted versus just pushing it through, and while you're sleeping, your software's updated.
You can get performance mode. You can get
right, exactly,
self-driving capabilities, etc.
Well, Tesla's gotten really good at that. Go ahead, Kim.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's great, this idea of the shift toward a customer-centric view of that software in general is having, and how you're making that possible, and making that possible across, evenly across any type of software, regardless of where they might be, if it's this small little bootstrapped startup or some gigantic, company like Apple or others. I love that. You mentioned something about, the actual physical device and then the software on this device. It reminded me of a show that we had a month, 2-3 ago, back in January, actually, with a company called Help Lightning, and they're focused on remote visual assistance. Mm-hmm. So is that like this really kind of this nice mashup between the software side of what Esper's doing and maybe the physical side of what they might be doing? How do you foresee those two universes kind of crossing, similar to what we saw in another show about the gaming world, right? Where you can take the digital and put it into the physical. Is that something you see in your future?
Exactly. I mean, our goal is to make that company that's doing the visual assistant, they have some software running on it. And how do they get that software, maybe they don't even preload it. Like when the device gets opened up, the visual assistant software gets deployed, and then it continues gets updated based on what the engineering team is doing, and that's the way it should work. I mean, it should kind of like have, as they make enhancements of the software, it's easily available for their customers to use, and our goal is to reduce the roadblocks. Confidence, and that's the thing, is like we provide all kinds of monitoring to make sure the software you deployed is working correctly and as expected. And so you can have those enhanced DevOps concepts like rollbacks or have staging, and so make sure you're reducing your blast radius, all these things. Like, I don't get too detailed, but it's like to give you safeguards so you can say, like, you don't even push the trigger or anything, it just happens. And so we're not there yet. Like device, the culture of devices needs to get there, and that's what we're enabling people to get to that point where they're comfortable deploying. We deploy our own agents like on these things very much in a DevOps way. Is like we've got confidence that we can have sprints of the output of the sprint software is deployed. That's not the way it works. People do sprints, wait 6 months, 10 months, and then the software gets deployed maybe into new hardware, and maybe into existing hardware. But we want to shrink the time when people can actually ship software to devices.
So Yadhu, I'm curious about the use cases because I'm sensing a lot of opportunity in smart cities, smart enterprises. Just even look at cameras, right? Historically, they were deployed for some network from operations center to track traffic, determine new flow of traffic, but all this was done manually. And then, most of these devices didn't necessarily have software, and if you had to update anything or add recognition, license plate recognition, you have to change out the device. Now, obviously, with smart cities technologies, a lot of these devices have embedded software, but updating them to do new features, to do new analytics, to do things that make them smarter is still a challenge. So can you help us? Is that a client? Who's the client of the product? Who would
our client
leverage
is actually a team that's building a product that's for maybe internal use. Let's say from a restaurant chain or somebody, or a retail company. I might be building some hardware or buy hardware, and I'm building software for that company, and I'm using internal. Or I might be building a consumer device that's in your home, or providing some system to another, like to a government, like a smart city product. It doesn't really matter. We sell to our businesses that are building products around smart devices and smart dedicated devices that can be like hospital room monitoring patient, kind of are they falling down from the bed or whatever capabilities that they have in that patient monitoring system, or like you said, a camera system that's on a pole somewhere and it's monitoring traffic, and maybe they enhance it. You have new algorithms. AI is changing, ML is changing continuously. Maybe you want to enhance that with new algorithms that you have better pattern matching, better detection, better object detection. You want to deploy that.
Yeah, I mean, some smart cities have it so that the cameras can determine the best route for an emergency response, and then changes the dynamics of when red lights turn on to actually help that, especially in very busy cities.
Exactly, and you don't want software updates to be the blocker for innovation.
Right,
that's key.
So how does Esper work? Is it a platform where these developers build on top of that has a DevOps containment built in? So when they get deployed, they actually have Esper code on it, and then they just do updates on a centralized fashion and push them out? How does that, am I oversimplifying it?
Exactly. So there is an Esper agent that's on these devices that's managing this update for you. It's either you install it, or we have manufacturers that are integrating that with the hardware so that it's on there from day one. And then you kind of go to our system and integrate with your software deployment, and then you continuously use a platform to say, I want to deploy software. You can partition your fleet, and go deploy onto that. So does it make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Very cool.
Very cool.
I see a lot of these benefits. I mean, as I played to earlier today, joking, obviously lowering costs, lowering spend, not having to physically, replace devices needlessly just to get an update, customer centric, everything that is. I'm also seeing an ecological kind of fallout to this, right? I mean, I think a lot of times we treat, the precious metals and other things that go into these devices as limitless. But the truth is there is a limit, right, to mining or accessibility, not to mention pollution. Am I just creating this in my own mind? Is that just like this happy consequence of something like your product? Or is there any intentionality behind this as well of what can we do, not just economically, but ecologically with software and technology?
I mean, I mean, that's one of the side effects. I mean, it's not, it's software improvement is core, but the side effect of that is you can make your hardware last longer. You don't have to have a service technician drive around. If you've got in the US, go install software or kind of manage the software. It allows it is from like even during the pandemic, people were doing software deployments from their home, and so there's a lot of aspects to kind of what you called ecological or environmental this thing that can play into this. It's about being more efficient and using your hardware, continue to use the hardware. Obviously, if like some hardware standard changes or you now need more performance or something like that, those things. But the goal is to get your hardware to last as long as you can with software improvements, and that's the key thing. Is like even like the concept of even updating phones it didn't exist 10 years ago. Now, like you take it for granted that Apple is going to give you updates every year, and it's going to make your phone actually have many more features than they had before. And that's the same thing. It's like every one of my customers wants to be Apple in the way that they want to have their improvement of their software see its way to their customers, and that there's a whole there's value, and they can monetize that value because now whether they have subscription fees, etc., from our customers, they can kind of substantiate that by, hey, we're improving your devices on a continuous basis.
Great, thank you.
I see the democratization of the technology, and we've seen it before too. I remember Walmart was a leader in analytics, and they had big data initiatives, billions of dollars spent doing that, but it was a closed garden. You unless you worked there, unless you were part of it, you didn't have access to that kind of insight and information. So there were companies that came out with those kinds of capability, companies like Axiom and others who disrupted that marketplace. It made it possible for smaller players to have the same use cases, same capabilities. It sounds as though we've used Apple as an example. That's kind of what your guys are doing, is creating it so that a smaller player who doesn't necessarily have those pockets can then still be competitive in the marketplace and provide value and make it simpler and easier to support their products in the marketplace.
Exactly.
Is that a fair assessment?
We have a lot of small companies using it. We also have really a lot of companies starting to use that. It's like they go, it's again going back to your efficiency. Is like, why reinvent the wheel?
Right. Eventually gets to the point like, why should we invest our own when we get to just buy the stuff? Right.
Yes, exactly. And that's the thing is like, like, as a developer, when I'm doing some cloud thing, do I go rebuild it every time? No, I go find a system or package that I would use. I'm not going to go build Kubernetes again or something like that. At Kubernetes, I'm going to use it. So that's kind of the same thing. It's like, as an engineering leader, I should be going like, I'm going to use a great product to kind of make my rest of my solution just that much better. And so we do have even larger companies kind of jumping on board, saying that we're going to use Esper for DevOps, and we're going to go focus on get a head start. This is a head start because it doesn't set you back trying to do this thing on product development.
Right. Yeah, you get to focus on your product, right? Rather than how to get it available. Perfect. So we can already see that a democracy democratizing is a really key component to Esper's company culture. We're coming to the final minutes of our show now, and so I do want to kind of shift that gear. What else is important to you as a company? What is the culture that you're creating? Who are the type of people that you hope to work for you, and why is it that I would want to work with you?
So one of the things that I talk about, like we love having people at Esper who take what their art really seriously. And their art can be anything. It can be, if you're marketing, your art is marketing. And if you're sales, your art is sales. And if you're engineering, your art is building engineering cool things. And to take that really pride in that art and want to like become better and bring their best art. And then that also kind of creates the ability for them to have career growth, personal improvement, all of that. And with that also is like high level of trust that this person has, that like they know their art and they're going to do it. And there's a lot of like ability to work together along different disciplines and come together from marketing to sales devices. And we have this thing like we got devices we're in the office most of the time now, and there's all kinds of different devices people can play around with, whether in whatever area you are, and go try out those devices, etc. Different form factors, different interesting concepts people bring to fruition. It's the ability to kind of know that, like as a whole, we can kind of create this category building company and product.
So Yadhu, you said earlier that you started your career trying to do a startup, and you learned a lot of lessons from that. Then you went to behemoth giants in the tech industry. Probably learned a lot more in those organizations, and now here you are again as an entrepreneur. What's that journey been like now as an entrepreneur? I mean, you guys have obviously been successful. You've raised, I think, over $100 million as a company. So you're not a startup per se. You're well on your way to having a successful outcome. What's that been like? Going from the beginning where it didn't work out to here you are now having a successful
Revenge is a dish best
journey.
served cold.
It's about bringing people with lots of various viewpoints and to the table, and that's really key. Is like I bring certain thing to the table, and is to gather a lot of people that I can go, okay, I want to learn from them. I want to learn different things. As a matter of fact, one of the things that I do, and which I really missed during the pandemic, is I like to walk around, learn about lots of like I'm not a sales guy, I'm not a marketing guy. It's like how do I know more about this? How do I know what their art is, etc. And that's been really key, kind of being able to immerse myself with all these other people and lots of opposites and lots of people who have got big complementary skills to Esper, and that's really important. You'll see me like one of the best part of my day is, that's why I'm in the office, is just go walk around and just talk to people, and that's why we have a team in Bangalore. So I want to travel at least once every quarter, go meet the team and go kind of find out what everyone's doing and working on, and that's like key aspects of it, and that's how I get better too, as a CEO, and like learn from like one of the mistakes I learned back when I do is like try to get people who bring different skill sets. When I started, the first one is like everybody was like me, and it was like we were just a bunch of people who thought the same. And this is an opportunity for bringing people of diverse thought processes and cultures and etc. together and build this product and company.
A lot of strong talent in Bangalore for industrial design and embedded devices. In a previous life, I spent a lot of time there building that out too. So traffic is awful though, but getting around is hard, but definitely a lot of talent. Well, we're up on time, Yadhu, and we've really appreciated having you as our guest today. We've learned a lot. We've learned that if you've got technology that's deployed remotely, whether it's a small device like a camera or something bigger that requires ongoing support, software updates, changes, fixes, what have you, and you don't want to go and drive out to do it every time or swap out hardware, why not have tech like Esper embedded in that allows you to do it remotely? So Congratulations.
Thank you.
We wish you a lot of continued success. Stay with us as we go off the air in just a second. That's the wrap for this week on Dojo Live shows. Come back. Monday is a holiday, so I don't think we're going to have the recap show, but maybe we'll do it on Tuesday or something, or we'll have a
That's
recap
probably a
video.
good idea because there's no live show on Tuesday. So
That's
no,
right.
no
So,
recap on Monday.
tell you what, come
recap
back
on
on
Tuesday.
for the recap show.
And on Wednesday, we have a live show for you. That's going to be with First Resonance and their CEO and co-founder, Karen Talati. And then on Thursday, there's actually 2 live shows, one at 10 o'clock a.m. Pacific and one at 12 o'clock. So that will be the 10 a.m. show is transcription, a 30B industry thanks to AI. That's with Verbit. It was supposed to be scheduled earlier this week, but we needed to reschedule. And then the afternoon show is with Jonathan Bush, CEO at Zeus Health, building a new platform for digital health. So 3 live shows next week and our recap.
Enjoy your long holiday weekend. See you all back on Tuesday.
Thank you, Yadhu.
Thank you.